This is cross-section of some interest of mine. Anyone who's been following the channel for some time knows that I'm quite the fan of watches. Love Japan. Quite the Japanophile. So what do you do if you're a watch guy and you've got a holiday planned over to Japan? Maybe you're going to be starting off in Tokyo before you head somewhere else. Go to the Seiko Museum. I can't recommend it enough. I've been there myself. It is absolutely fantastic. It is a fascinating tour of the history of the company Seiko, as well as of timekeeping itself. You will find a lot of interesting things on display in there, including prototypes and watches, and even just clock prototypes that have made history. So this is from the Japanese factory. Title of the video, Why Seiko Fans Must Go to the Seiko Museum in Tokyo. Oh, and did I mention admission is free? Yeah, admission's free. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, play.
If you're broke in Tokyo, I've got the perfect experience for you. Today we're going into the Seiko Museum of Ginza. It's €0 to go in and take a look, but you do need a reservation.
This is one of the more underrated parts of Ginza. Not a lot of people know about the Seiko Museum, but if you love Seiko watches, if you love the history of Japanese watchmaking, this is definitely a place to go. What we'll be doing in this video is that we're going to be going over all the floors and showing you the best parts of this museum. We're just going to show you how the museum
I think that was an original Seiko Astron.
Learn a lot of things as well. Just please don't steal things like you usually do. Just a little bit of a fun fact, this Seiko Museum is actually featured in our Ultimate Watch Guide of Japan. If you want to know where all the best watch shops...
I think we have reacted to that video before. You can go find it on both the YouTube page and the Rumble page. Lord Rexworth VT over on YouTube and Lord Rexworth on Rumble.
...are in Japan, recommended by us, the Japanese factory. Go check the description down below for more information. If you're subscribed to our Patreon, or if you do a one-time purchase on our Shopify, you can have access to the guide.
And it's constantly updated as we find more and more hidden gems in the Japanese market. Anyway,
Brilliant.
Enough shameless self-advertising. Let's get right into the content.
Yeah, enough ads. Get on with it. Seiko run. Ooh. Oh, that's gorgeous. An original Grand Seiko high beat. Absolutely beautiful. And you can still find examples of these on the second-hand market in pretty decent condition. And they're not very expensive either. Oh. That was a cool chronograph. And all these different day-date complications. Some of the clocks that they've made. That's neat. Whatever it is. Right, first floor basement.
All right.
Don't think we're going to find the DARPA chief down here, though.
So right now we are at the B1 floor of the Seiko Museum. Right now we are surrounded by all the great technology over the years from Seiko, whether it be diver watches, timers. This is pretty much a tool watch section, things that we really take for granted. So it's really cool to see the evolution of watchmaking and Seiko in general.
Yeah, this is cool. Seiko really made a name for themselves back in the 1960s when they became the official timekeepers for the Tokyo Olympics.
I want that timer back there. I want a timer that size, but for people who subscribe to the channel.
I think at one point Seiko did make a scale replica of that. I don't think they make it anymore, though.
Maybe we can count how fast you guys can subscribe.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So these drawers are sometimes closed, so just make sure you pull them out when you're here. It's got a mix of all sorts of stuff. So this one was the Spacewalk watch made spring drive.
That is cool.
Watch made for
Most extreme watches Seiko has ever made, the Seiko Spacewalk, designed specifically for space travel. That's true. There have been a few examples of Seikos that have gone into space. It's oversized, rugged design ensures reliability in zero gravity and harsh environments. Seiko also released a few commemorative editions celebrating its space heritage, making these pieces highly collectible. It's not just a watch, it's a glimpse into Seiko's boldest engineering feat.
The spacewalk. So these are all the prototypes, which is pretty cool to see.
That's
From what I remember,
incredible.
the spacewalk was a watch that they wanted to take into space. I'm not sure if they actually gone into space or not with it.
I
See,
think
this one's a
one or two examples may have made it in on one of the, at least one of the Apollo missions, if I remember right.
sports tech flight computer. So it's a
Ooh, that looks pretty. Looks better than any Breitling. That's called the Flight Master. Seiko's early 1990s push to create accessible, functional pilot chronographs.
pilot watch with calculation and conversion for the flight.
It's
So
also got a
this
slide
one actually
rule in
here is a kinetic, right, which is a quartz watch that has a rotor that will, spin around in the back to charge it up. So before they had quartz solar watches, which gain energy from the sun, these ones gain energy from a standard rotor, like in the back of these watches.
That's interesting. I have to wonder if any of that tech made it over into the spring drive movement. It wouldn't surprise me if it did. Oh. Seiko pulse meter. Almost reminds me of that little TV watch they had for a time.
Yeah, so
Digital
you can see
watches
here the
with
world's
lap
first portable
counters?
quartz clock, right? And
1964.
yeah, it's a bit bigger than the quartz watches are now, but it's cool to
Yeah, these are some of the early examples of quartz clocks. Amazing how far the tech has come. But that's miniaturization for you.
see. You can see the internals. Same here, the world's first digital stop clock. So, on the right there, they've got a stopwatch that hooks into a quartz machine.
Those are some
these are
beautiful
all
stopwatches.
Yeah, this one's got a printer attached, so you can print off your time and take.
Yeah,
home
that's
with you
very
and
80s,
look
90s.
at it. You're legally forced to take a photo in front of this clock tower if you buy a Grand Seiko in Ginza.
That's a bit cringe. Alright, we head up to the second floor.
Now that we made it to the second floor, let's take a moment to talk about the man who started it all, Kintaro Hattori, the founder of Seiko.
That's
Kintaro
the man.
began his journey in 1877 as a young clock repairer in Tokyo. Through his repair work, he managed to save 150 yen, which he used to start his own company, K. Hattori & Co. From the very beginning, Kintaro showed a remarkable vision. He began selling imported timepieces from foreign trading companies and gradually earned their trust and established a name for himself. But it wasn't easy. Japan was still rooted in its traditional ways, and modern timekeeping was a new idea.
Yeah, this was 1881. That would have been not too long after the Perry expeditions and the Meiji Restoration, when Japan opened itself back up to the world.
After years of hard work and trading success, he expanded his business to Ginza, which would later become the birthplace.
This building that we see here on this street corner in Ginza, chat, this is the historic home of the Wako department store, one of the oldest department stores in the world. And building is famous for its curved design, but also the clock tower up on the top. And the clock tower has always, or almost always, had the Seiko sponsorship. And this particular department store has been one of the flagship retailers for a very long time of Seiko and Grand Seiko watches. Yeah, 145 years ago. Yeah. In the grand scheme of history, they Japan has not been open to the rest of the world for very long.
Of Seiko.
Well, you can see all of the early parts of a watch, right? So you got mochiban, aka dial. This is the back case. These are like parts of the base plate, hairspring.
That's
Make, like, alarm
incredible.
clocks here.
Yeah, exactly. I
Well, the
think it's
very first
exactly-
alarm clock is 1899.
Damn. So then you can see the kind of progression, right? Alarm clocks, pocket watches,
Oh,
and then it really started to get wristwatches.
slow journey towards
Yeah.
miniaturization.
So the Laurel,
1913, yeah.
And they do, I think, still have kind of a modern take on the Laurel. It's quite expensive. I think it's like well, at one point it was about $750. I think it's probably near $1,000 now if you wanted to get a modern version of this. But it is quite beautiful. And I think it's one of their recent experimentations with ceramic dials.
so Laurel's Japan's first wristwatch. Before that, it was all pocket watches, right? It was seen as unmanly to wear a watch.
Yeah, that's true. World War One kind of forced the adoption of wristwatches for men. Those were originally seen as a more effeminate item, but it's just more practical to have it on your wrist rather than having to constantly fumble for a pocket watch.
And now it's extremely manly to wear a watch. Am I right?
I always wonder, like, why did it take so long to, like, be like, I want to put this pocket watch on my wrist? Like, why did it take forever to come up with the idea of putting it on the wrist?
Necessity is the mother of
They
invention.
wanted to make it, they needed to make it kind of shock resistant, because when it's in your pocket, it's a bit more protected. When it's on your wrist, you got to, move it around. It could bang
Yeah, maybe.
things. And I think it was just a mental thing as well.
Yeah.
Men really wanted to have their hands free while they were doing stuff. And I think, a wristwatch made a bit more, a pocket watch made a bit more sense than a wristwatch, right?
I wonder how much this will.
And it's funny he mentions that sort of fragility, especially in wristwatches. That's exactly what would lead to one chap working for Casio to eventually develop the G-Shock.
Cost you, like, for original Laurel?
For original Laurel, I mean, they're out there.
Oh, that's
I'd have
priceless.
to look up the price.
Why would you wear one, though, right?
Yeah,
I
they're
don't
like a
think
couple
we-
grand.
Yeah, it belongs in a museum.
There's a difference between like vintage watches now and like I say vintage watches, but I mean like 50s, 70s, 80s vintage watches, and these like pre-war ones. Like the materials were not that good, the cases were not that shock resistant, and the biggest issue is like parts. If you screw up a part on a watch like this, it's basically cooked.
Yeah,
You can't get a new part
there's no
easily.
replacing it. Seiko's attempted a regulator clock. That looks like, what is that?
Okay, so we just got done with the second floor, which is more about the beginnings of Seiko. Now on the third floor, it's the beginnings of clocks in general. Although it would be pretty cool if Seiko made the sundial or something, right? Some of these are just
Beautiful.
phenomenal looking. Like, this is my favorite. My
Yeah,
favorite
these
clocks
are-
back there with the.
These are more historical pieces you'll find, not made by Seiko, but they are historically significant.
The man holding the globe. Definitely a really fun spot.
Oh, that
Just
is
wanna know more about
beautiful.
watchmaking in general.
That is
I've got a
gorgeous.
conspiracy theory.
You got a conspiracy theory? What's
Yeah,
up?
Seiko invented the moon so they could sell moon phase watches. Is that crazy to say?
That's not. That is very crazy.
So I'm not gonna show
You heard it here, chat. Seiko invented the moon.
too much of the third floor because it's all about the history of timekeeping. And honestly, it's an experience you really want to see and hear for yourself.
It's fascinating. Oh. There's just something so zen about that chime. I love that.
The fourth floor walks you through Seiko's rise, from their early wall clocks to pocket watches and eventually Japan's first wristwatch. You'll see how Seiko kept pushing forward from automatic watches to the birth of quartz and the massive shift.
There it is, chat. This right here is the original Seiko Quartz Astron, released in, I believe it was 1969. What we're looking at here is the original, the very first quartz movement wristwatch. Cost a fortune back then. There was a time when quartz watches were far more expensive than mechanical watches, and they were considered a luxury item. If you had a quartz wristwatch, you were a person of means back in the 60s and 70s. And then eventually, they figured out ways to further miniaturize and mass produce it to the point where they just became ridiculously cheap. And now, the situation is reversed, where mechanical watches have gone back to being luxury goods, and quartz movements, for the most part, not regarded as luxury, with the exception of some Grand Seiko movements.
That became known as the Quartz Revolution. They even showcased some of Seiko's most experimental craft.
There's the TV watch. We've seen this before. If you've seen the James Bond film, I believe it's Octopussy, they had one of these that Bond was playing with in Q's laboratory. The watch itself, you had it on your wrist. It had a small LCD display for the time and for the date, I think for stopwatch capability. And then this little screen down here was a television screen. You hook this lead in here, and the other end over here, and this bit you would stick in, say, a coat pocket, and this little black box was a television and FM radio receiver. They don't work anymore since everyone's gone to digital broadcast and all we can pick up is analog signals. But for the time, you could have almost a Dick Tracy type wristwatch setup where you could watch TV on your watch with the receiver in a coat pocket. You could either watch TV or you could listen to the radio. That's pretty cool for its time.
Like the Seiko TV watch, which honestly still feels pretty futuristic today. Let's go through some of.
Oh, yeah, this is another one. The Seiko wrist computer system. This was one of the, I guess you could call this one of the early forays into creating a smartwatch. You had this little miniature computer setup with a QWERTY keyboard and a docking station for your watch. You put your watch there, and it works like a data bank. You could store notes for yourself, phone numbers, contact information for people. You could probably even set up a calendar with reminders. You know, all the basic things that we sort of take for granted with our smartphones. And Seiko was doing this back in 1984 with the wrist computer. I love the way it looks. I would love to be able to find a working model of this and just play with it for a bit. That'd be so cool. Smartphones really killed a lot of technologies. I don't know if I go so far as to say they killed them, but they did radically change them and integrated and streamlined them into something, I guess, a bit more convenient for a lot of people. Because, you know, getting something like this to work, it took some effort. There was a learning curve with something like this. But still, this looks ever so fun to play with. Radio watches must be hard to control. No, not really. Just press a button and picks up radio signals from atomic clocks and sets the time for you automatically. There's an amazing tour of a TV company by LTT. Oh, Linus Tech Tips explaining why TVs always somehow stay cheap. Yeah. There's, they always manage to make TVs cheaper. And yet at the same time, a a lot of modern so-called smart television sets have become quite the grift on their own.
Seiko's greatest creations.
All right, so right now we're on the 4th floor. I think this is where it's most interesting for everybody here. You see a lot of history of the more modern side of Seiko, including world's first Grand Seiko as well on display, and then some explanations here about the Swiss chronometer competition in Geneva. Essentially, the story is they started putting their watches into the competition in 1964. And when they first dropped, 144th, 153rd place, terrible results.
Yeah, they were horrible at first.
In 1968, they actually won first overall with their quartz and mechanical timepieces. So after that happened, Swiss chucked a big dummy spit. They were very upset, and they said, "Bam, the Japanese." Okay, not exactly, but close enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what they did. With these timekeeping competitions, for decades, they stopped doing them completely. And then when they did bring them back, they said only the Swiss can take part. Japanese aren't allowed anymore. Only the Swiss. That is how butthurt the Swiss were over Seiko, both figuratively and literally cleaning their clocks.
Seiko responded by doing a victory lap and releasing this watch here, which is the Seiko Astronomical Observatory Chronometer. So these are very, very rare, very hard to see. Good examples start at about 6 million yen or 40 grand USD.
Good God. And worth every penny because it's just that iconic. It's the same shape as the original Quartz Astron. Reminds me of the time the French judges freaked out when they blind selected a California wine as their favorite in a competition. And if I remember right, that wine in particular was Charles Shaw. It's a brand now owned by distributed by Trader Joe's. And for many years was referred to by people as $2 Chuck.
Up to about 110 grand USD. So these are one of the top Seiko collectors really want this watch, and this is the guaranteed chance to see it, right? You won't see these on sale anywhere else essentially. But it's just a really, really nice watch, and really Japan showing that they were ahead of the Swiss, and deciding to put the movements from that competition into this watch. So very, very cool to see.
So this section right here has been getting a lot of attention lately. These dials, just come check out the styles. This is
Let's see.
The 70s Seiko line, and there's a lot of different colors.
Pretty shiny
They don't really make
things.
these effects anymore.
Yeah, I think these were really popular for their cut glass, right? But they have really vibrant
That's what it
colors.
reminds me
I think
of.
it's just very emblematic of the 70s.
Okay, so I almost missed this one in the case.
Very pretty.
Right here we found the
Probably should look at
1964
reviving that.
Olympic Seiko timer. Essentially, only about 200 were
Oh.
given out.
It's so simple, so understated, yet so lovely. Created for the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, is one of the world's earliest wristwatches with a built-in chronograph and tally counter. Features a unique button-operated counter that allowed wearers to track scores or laps manually, making it unlike any other Seiko of its era. Produced in extremely limited numbers, considered one of the rarest, most collectible Seiko chronographs ever made.
For people that were around during the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. I think only people in the village could
Beautiful.
purchase these things, and they are incredibly rare to find.
I love the bracelet too. This interesting sort of hexagonal link-shaped bracelet. I really like that.
I'm not so surprised that they have it here in the museum, of course, but it is very difficult to find these in the wild. I think they go for 40K for like a really good condition.
I can see why.
Interestingly enough, it comes with a pusher that then can increment a counter at the top, right? So it can count up to 99. So if you want to count laps or something like that, that's what it's useful for. Oh, Yuda, you have to see this. This is a Seiko Quartz Superior. So these were plus minus 2 seconds a month back in 1973.
That's incredible
Absolutely
accuracy
insane.
even back
The
then.
dial has a technique that goes from like kind of cyan, deep blue, purple, and these are crazy now. It's very, very hard to find these, especially on a
Beautiful.
Richley bracelet.
That's your
This integrated bracelet watch with a day-date complication. It's lovely.
dream watch. I think you told me before.
That's my dream Seiko. I would
So,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, it's up there. But you can see there next to it as well, the Superior Twin Quartz. So we started selling a lot of these as well. But these were.
Is it just
plus
me, or does
minus
it kind of
5
look like
seconds
Mr.
per
Beast?
year,
Yeah, maybe a
which is
little.
an insane feat, especially in 1978. But essentially has 2 quartz crystals.
Looking at some of these prices chart, these were the retail prices that you were expected to pay. Superior Twin Quartz, 1978, 230,000 yen. Grand Seiko Twin Quartz, also 1978. That was, looks like that's about 110 grand. So these were, trying to calculate exchange rates in my head. These were quartz watches that cost at least a couple of grand when they first came out. And even back in the late 1970s, that was an obscene amount of money for a wristwatch. So you see what I mean? These were once highly coveted luxury items.
Year, which is an insane feat, especially in 1978. But essentially has 2 quartz crystals inside that they use to achieve that high level of accuracy, and it's a technology that only Seiko were doing back then. So very, very cool. So here we have the first ever quartz watch, wristwatch from Seiko, which is the Quartz Astron 35 SQ.
The OG
so you
chart.
see there, the price is 450,000 yen back in 1969. That was more expensive than a fully decked out Toyota Camry. That was like maybe a base spec Porsche, right? So
Yeah, you could have a base model Porsche, or you could have a Seiko Quartz Astron. That was the level that we were talking about back then.
people don't really get how expensive this thing was when it dropped and how much of a baller move it was. And this is what really sent shockwaves into the watch market, right? It made the Swiss, as they would say, piss their pants. Because yeah, this basically was, 10 times more accurate than any Rolex or any other high-end Swiss
Absolutely.
watch you could buy.
It was no contest.
So yeah, again, quite hard to find these are getting up there in price. They kind of start at like 10 to 15 grand for a really bad one and much higher for the high quality ones.
All right, so this little section in the corner is kind of like my jam. I really love just digital watches, and Seiko at the time was very conscious about the
Before we get to that, oh, Dover Buddy 12, thank you for the 2 bits. Just searched up Seiko chain watches. I say it's quite extraordinary. Indeed. This back here that we're looking at, it's not an actual working unit, it's more of a photographic print. But what we're looking at back here were some of the original quartz clocks. Quartz clocks, going back to the days of, say, like World War II and just shortly after the war, were these massive units, almost like server racks, which is what it took to power and to maintain the accuracy, all of that. It's an incredible journey going from these massive units to try and tell the time to something you put on your wrist and you don't even think about anymore.
technology, and they started to make their own, and they made some really cool ones. One that I would like to highlight is this TV watch. You can literally watch TV off of this thing. You would need to have the attachment, which, very...
The receiver, yeah.
Yeah, the receiver.
It could fit in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, technically it could fit in your pocket or your
If
bag.
you had a big pocket.
Yeah. But yeah, this is basically TikTok and YouTube Shorts back in the year 1982. So I just wanted to ask you, what's your favorite era
That's one way of putting it.
Seiko watches?
Gotta be
I wonder if those massive units were more for business doing international finance. They started out as something for military applications, actually. Which is to be expected. Something like that, you need absolute precise timekeeping. So yeah, those were originally built for military purposes, and then made their way into the civilian market.
70s, I think, just has a mix of everything, right? It has the cut glass, the advent of those quartz watches, like the single quartz, twin quartz, grand quartz. Then you start getting some of these nice Seiko 5s, right? These Seiko 5 Sports, the Actuses, cut
Beautiful.
glass. They just had really interesting designs. I mean, look at that one there with the gold and green, right? You're not going to get a watch designs like that in, a modern day case. But speed timers as well. You had here some of the early Bellmatics as well. So those ones had a chiming function as well, which is pretty cool. And that's when they started selling a lot more watches.
Timing
overseas,
functions.
right? Instead of being
Timing functions, especially with like minute repeaters, have always been regarded as incredibly complicated movements, and oftentimes, especially in more recent years, have been more of a luxury type good. And here you have Seiko putting them into some of the more entry-level watches.
just only domestic Japan sales. Seiko moved around more to the world, and you start getting a lot more overseas models. So that's when everyone basically was becoming a Seiko fan, right? Instead of having to buy expensive Rolexes or Swiss watches like Omega, etc., you could start buying really nice Japanese watches with high quality at a much more reasonable price.
But yeah, this really goes to show you that the Tokyo Olympics from 1964 was a very pivotal point for them, because not a lot of people knew what a Seiko was. And since the Olympics was broadcasted worldwide, people got to know what Seiko was. And this is basically, because of Seiko performing so well at the Olympics, this is what was produced everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, so now we're in the section where all the nicknamed watches have come from. So you can see the Seiko tuna. It's called the tuna because it has a design that looks like a tuna can. The Samurai here.
The Samurai is gorgeous. Samurai to me always seemed like Seiko's response to the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean cities. I always really, really liked the look and the feel of the Samurai. I always wanted one myself too, but sadly I think they've discontinued the particular models that I like.
Because, of how the kind of case and stuff looks, right? The shape makes it feel like a sword. That's what they call it, the Samurai. The monster, because it looks like a monster.
Looks like a dune worm.
Yeah, exactly. But it just has a very captivating, interesting shape. And the turtle, because the case shape here looks like a turtle's back, right? And the bracelet too kind of looks like the rubber.
One of the more popular divers, the turtle.
As well. So here's the nicknamed watch section, right? Just like you guys call Rolex like a root beer.
Everyone always pulls up the Dune worm bucket.
These are the Seiko kind of equivalents of those nicknamed watches.
Or were they made from the fans or the company?
I think it was made by the fans, right?
Yeah.
I think Seiko are, cool enough to run with the nicknames as well, right? They're not stuffy like Rolex, and they say there's no names for these watches. It's not a Pepsi, it's a 126710BLRO, actually. Here we have Credor. For those who don't know, Credor is another sub-brand from Seiko. Essentially, the reason they kind of created it was to, have a different approach to watchmaking, right? So these ones are more kind of traditional European styled watches, whereas Grand Seiko is more traditional Japanese style watchmaking, right? And they also, on these range, that's where they wanted to use their more, gold and diamonds and expensive materials, right? That would kind of hold their value better than other ones. So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. This locomotive, which is designed by Gerald Gensler himself. So you can see it's got the very Gerald.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's a Credor. In the Strata brands in the Seiko family chart, you've got Seiko 5, then Seiko, then King Seiko, then Grand Seiko, and then at the tippy top is Creedor. That name is reserved only for the fanciest of fancy watches from the Seiko family. And Gerald Genta, quite famous for creating the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and also designed watches for a lot of other watchmaking brands out there. Seiko being one of them through Creedor. And yeah, all these signatures kind of bolted in design, integrated bracelet, all that.
Gents are kind of vibes, and here you've got, you know, 2 gold watches. This one recently with lapis lazuli, we saw this at Jacquard and Betty. They were selling one.
Oh, that's pretty.
Of these for about $1 million, so about $6,000 US. But just a lot of interesting.
There's no
designs.
hour
Unfortunately,
markers
all these
though.
ones,
It's about as useless as a
Gerald Genta
Movado.
inspired. So they weren't designed by him, but it's very clear to see the inspiration here. And there's a few different designs for these ones. But 1980, they introduced the Creedor logo here, which has, you know, these 3 kind of stylized crowns, stylized representation of a Yama, the kanji for Yama, which is mountain.
Mountain,
So
okay.
it represents the pinnacle, the peak of Japanese watchmaking.
Learned something new today. Oh, yeah, those are the famous Creedor minute repeaters. Only made maybe like a dozen each of these, and each one of them cost about 6 figures. All of them handmade. All of them able to chime the hour and the minutes. And all of them absolute works of art. Oh, here we go. 6app. Grand Seiko. Here's the good stuff.
All right, now we're on the 6th floor, which is the Grand Seiko Museum. So you get to see the history of Grand Seiko specifically, not just Seiko. So we're going to take you through and show a lot of the things. I think the first thing that's worth talking about is the first Grand Seikos, right? So they explain here the history of, you know, how they kind of split off and made their own thing. They have all 3 variants of the first Grand Seiko: the engraved logo dial, the embossed logo dial, the embossed logo dial. It was 25,000 yen in 1960. So this was
A lot of money even back then.
A motorcycle, cost of a motorcycle, something like that.
So what makes it grand? I don't understand.
Essentially, it's just a higher level watchmaking, right? The whole idea was to create a world-class high accuracy watch from Japan.
Yeah.
Right. Before these,
Most everything sourced in Japan, the parts, especially the labor, the people who work on these watches and assemble them, typically have something like 10, 20 years experience under the belt already. And yes, especially when it comes to their quartz Grand Seikos, all of their quartz crystals are grown in-house. Probably worth around 60 Gs back then. They were expensive watches back then, and they're expensive watches even now. But even just like a base model Grand Seiko 9F quartz you're probably looking at about 2 or 3 grand. Not cheap by any measure. But they are some of the best watches in the world in terms of quality and in terms of accuracy.
watches were nice, don't get me wrong, but you know, they weren't really high accuracy, they weren't really world class. This is Grand Seiko and Japan in general taking a step into, let's make some high class watches.
The Grand Seiko floor is way different from everything we saw, and also it smells nice.
Yeah, it smells really
Can we
nice.
just mention that? It smells nice. Like, I really want to walk out of the Grand Seiko here. But
Yeah, just like me, right? So it's quite hard to find these on the market because it's the first Grand Seiko in platinum, right? Which is very, very nice. But a lot of these have been melted down over the years for the platinum price,
no.
similar to early gold watches as well. But you can still find them around. Obviously, a fair bit more expensive now because the price of platinum and gold keeps spiking. It's $4,000
Yeah,
an ounce
because
at the moment
politicians
for
won't
gold,
stop
so
printing and
it's worth
spending
talking
money.
About the different case shapes on offer. So you can see here, for example, the 57 GS case is a self-dater. So it's got a date function on the window. And coming over here as well, you get to see side by side the 62 GS and the 44 GS. So side by side, you can really see the difference in the case, the lugs, and how they look, right? So it's very unique, kind of different style between. And they explain here the 9 design elements
Both
that make
lovely,
it a Grand
incredibly
Seiko,
understated.
right? So it needs to have double width index, multifaceted hands, curved side profile, highly mirror polished bezel, inward slant between the case, multifaceted regulated interface, semi-recessed crown, flat dial, and a highly mirror polished case surfaces. That's where you get that Zaratsu polishing, right? That makes it a very mirror case and it really makes it shine.
Yeah, there's a very big thing with Grand Seiko is Zaratsu polishing on the case, on the hands. It's similar to what they do with katanas, samurai swords, that sort of thing. Hand polishing it to a mirror sheen.
So here as well, we see some of the early high beat movements, right? High beat in this case being a 36,000 BPH movement. So that makes the second hand a lot smoother. Not spring drive level yet.
Yeah, it's high beat is much more ticking per second than your standard automatic movements.
But still very, very beautiful. So I think this
almost continuous sweep.
You can see pretty much all the case styles: 57 GS, 62 GS, 19.
Wonder how much watchmakers get paid these days. Not sure the exact wages that someone at Grand Seiko, especially in the master shop, not sure how much they make. I should like to think they get paid rather well for their work, and especially for so many years of dedicated service to the company. But it's also one of those things where I think you really have to have a passion for it.
GS for the ladies, 45. And there's just a lot of ones here that, are quite rare or you don't see that often. One of the ones that I wanted to point out, 61 here. So we saw one of these in our video in Amemura BB village in Osaka. So just quite hard to find these 61 GSs with this crazy like pillow style case. But this one here too is quite nice.
That is interesting.
GSC. It's just got a really amazing kind of feathered or hammer finished effect on the dial and case. I love it. One of my favorite GSs I think ever. But there's also a lot of these VFAs as well, which these ones, the price is getting kind of insane. This one here, the 61 GW.
Make precise crafting these watches must be an extraordinary hobby if they give their hearts into it. It's more than a hobby. People who make these Grand Seikos, they've devoted their life to their craft. That's their primary means of making a living.
L special. It has a really, really nice bracelet on it. And I love that it has like the GS in gold
nice multi-link there.
And yeah, high beat, day date in English and Japanese. Just really, really nice. And then you get to see here all of their different like historical movements, right? So these are their early 60s movements. And you can kind of see the progression along the way and how stuff got better and better. And then, the early quartzes here, 9F, just a beautiful kind of design, the early quartzes, and then going down as well, the 9R. So you start seeing the spring drive movements here. Obviously, the finishing a lot better.
Spring drive is very interesting as a complication. Or as a movement, I should say. It is almost like a hybrid between mechanical and quartz. And the end result is a watch that is highly accurate, not quite as accurate as quartz, but very close. And it has a continuous sweeping hand, almost like old-style electric clocks. It's really quite lovely to see in person, and especially on the wrist.
You can kind of see 15 years of progress in one go. So when Grand Seiko came back especially with the spring drive, they were not really confident at the time. So a lot of them were what's called double stamped, which means at the top it says Seiko and then at the bottom it says Grand Seiko. So that's what the double stamping means. You can see it here on some of these examples.
My
right?
Grand
See
Seiko
here,
is double stamped like
SBGL
that.
002, says Seiko, Grand Seiko.
Nowadays, the
SBGL
modern Grand
001,
Seikos,
Seiko,
they
Grand Seiko.
just have the Grand Seiko logo up
I'm not a fan of
top.
this.
You're not the only one, because they're usually like half price compared to the Grand Seiko stamped ones. Another one that I wanted to highlight here, SBGA 211 with the snowflake pattern. This was really the first kind of...
Yeah, this diver watch, this spring drive diver, and especially the snowflake. Snowflake is a gorgeous design. The face itself, it looks like it has the texture of freshly fallen snow.
Grand Seiko that really took off in the West and was their like first kind of smash hit, right?
Looked it up, everything is machine made now. Only the highest end Seikos are assembled at the Shizukishi studio. Ranges between $20 an hour to $50 an hour. These are guesses by third-party analysts, no actual confirmed figures released. Yeah. If true, that's a bit disappointing. Only 20 an hour.
So I think, you know, looking at it, it's just very nice. Titanium case, Saratsu polishing, nice texture dial, spring drive. I can see why this was the most popular Grand Seiko for a long time.
I
Now
still
think
want one.
The Shimbun is the #1 Grand Seiko watch, but this is still very popular. So we're keeping the best for last. The Kodo, Constant Force Tourbillon. This is a new style of tourbillon from Grand Seiko. Again, took them a very long time.
I
to
remember
make
this one.
These watches are like $330,000. They're quite hard to get, but I mean, look at that movement. Isn't that insane?
That is insane.
So it combines
Look
a
at that.
constant force mechanism to supply steady power from the main spring, and then a tourbillon as well to counteract the effects of gravity on the same axis. So that's a lot of technical jargon. Go look it up on Wikipedia. It's just crazy, and I mean, it looks crazy too.
It seems like it cut off at the year 2023, but we have some new watches now from Grand Seiko.
Yeah, the ultra fine accuracy. You know, with the stated accuracy of plus minus 20 seconds a year, you know, that's getting to the point
That's
where
not bad.
it's quartz watch level accuracy.
That's
Kinda
really,
cool
really
watch,
good.
So might have to come back later, get the 2025 update, and if anyone from Seiko or Grand Seiko is watching, you know, we'd love to learn more about the UFA in person, maybe film some content there. So yeah, please let us know.
I don't think they showed it, chat. Yeah, no, they didn't show it. They probably won't even show it here at the end. But they have in the Seiko Museum, get this, the original prototype
Successfully
movement.
Climbed out of the Seiko.
They have the original prototype movement for what would eventually become the mechanism for Big Ben in London. You see it there in person, the thing still functions. The prototype. It still works. I thought that was incredible when I first saw it. And they've moved this museum around quite a bit over the years. Used to be in a fairly kind of quiet residential neighborhood in Tokyo, and then they moved most everything into Ginza, into their flagship store. But yeah, when I saw that for the first time, I was absolutely entranced. Big Ben still runs, so I don't see why the one they have shouldn't either in Elizabethtown. Well, yeah, I mean, fair enough, but usually things like that are typically just kind of broken up and discarded after a while. So to see it in their museum, still working, it's just, like I said, you become almost entranced by it. They seem like typical apprentice rates for most skilled trades. I think so. I would have thought they'd be making more.
Museum all 7 floors completed. How did you like it, man?
Yeah, I loved it. It's very cool to see the history of Seiko, Grand Seiko, and for Seiko to put us on game by showing us some of those awesome watches. I loved the Credor section because they're an underrated gem. Is that crazy to say?
Credor is super underrated. I personally like the
Agreed.
Grand Seiko section because
Who doesn't?
everything just felt grand. Smelled nice too, so it was awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching.
With the
Patreon,
smell of
as
Hinoki
always,
wood.
Love all you guys. Thank you guys so much for supporting us.
We'll see you guys in next week's video.
All right. Give that a like, chat. We'll go ahead and stop the video there.